thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really honored and flattered to be among all these amazing speakers. I really enjoyed today so far, and it was a very dense day, and so I want to quickly check in with the audience. I don't know, it has been a lot of content. Is it even possible to take in another keynote, or should we have like, yeah, it's possible, I get nods, okay. So I'm gonna try and do it really fast and fun. I don't know if I can. My name is Anan. I identify as non-binary. I use they, them, or no pronouns. And I am a transdisciplinary artist, and I'm super happy to share my research today, my artistic research, and also to delve a little bit into my research on biotechnologies that are evolving at the moment, which have influenced my latest work. So I'm talking about human reproduction from xenofeminist and post-human perspectives. And I want to start with two notes. The first being that I'm going to be talking about pregnancy, and I'm aware that pregnancy can be a sensitive topic for some people. So if someone feels uncomfortable, please feel free to leave the room and come back if you want. And the other note being that I'm going to be talking from a perspective of a person who was raised in Central Europe, in Switzerland, as a white person, and that this is going to shape my talk and my perspective and the context from which I am talking. So this is not a global observation, especially when I talk about the representation of pregnant bodies, but it's really a situated observation. So part one is on post-human wombs, which is a work of mine, and pregnancy as a hack. And I want to first start to talk a little bit about the representation of pregnant bodies. So I want to start with a quote by Sophie Lewis. Are people familiar with the work of Sophie Lewis, who's a very bold writer who wrote a lot about surrogacy and the abolition of the family? And I want to start with this quote. I'm going to read it in a second, because while I'm very critical of pregnancy, and I regard it as kind of flawed and the origin of a lot of gender divide and inequality, I also want to say I respect reproductive labor. And this quote by Sophie Lewis comes from a very fun angle and looks at pregnancy as something quite weird, which I relate to very much. So maybe I can read it actually from my notes. I have consistently been at pains to affirm not just the creative power of gestators, but the freedom of anyone to engage in extreme sports, including those involving alien colonization from within. Everybody should be supported, in my view, to engage in kinky pursuits, like pregnancy, that involve a degree of danger, and there should be maximal infrastructural safeties in place to this end, to broaden access and to prevent undesired injury. That's Sophie Lewis in a lecture, actually, or an essay on Shulamith Firestone, who has written about artificial wombs a lot, and I'm going to talk about artificial wombs later in the second part of my talk. And Shulamith Firestone has rightfully been criticized very much for being a white feminist, which is something we have talked about before. Next slide, please. Oh, I thought I changed that. That will come later, but anyways, I can read it now. It also fits now. If nature is unjust, change nature, which is a quote from Laboria Kubonix. Are people familiar with the Xenofeminist manifesto? A little bit? Yeah, okay. But I'm not going to talk about that now. You just read it, take it in. The next slide should be this one. Yeah, perfect. So this is, I'm going to start with this anecdote because I think it's fitting for the talk. This is Molly Bass. Molly Bass is a cook and a food influencer, and she's quite famous in the US. I didn't know her before I read about this incident that I'm going to talk about to you. But Molly Bass was basically the face of a campaign, of an advertisement campaign, which looked like this. And she's advertising lactation cookies, which she even says in this post she's not sure that they are actually a thing. So they're basically commodifying something that probably doesn't really have like a health value, but anyways, it's part of the commodification, I guess, of reproduction, of human reproduction. And so she's basically the poster face and also she came up with the recipe also for these cookies, and she has worked with a company called Swell, and Swell sells in a very hipster way lactation, like breastfeeding products. And so, next slide, please. The campaign shortly before Mother's Day this year, the campaign was up on Times Square and then was taken down immediately, which I think is very funny, because the advertising company that is responsible for these billboards said they have to check if this content is against their, is violating their guidelines. And I think that's very funny. She herself, Molly Bass, also wrote about it on Instagram, and she said, "I think you will see the irony. Bring on the lingerie as long as it satiates the male gaze." So, of course, there's a long tradition of naked people, especially cis women, on Times Square and similar billboards, but now this particular one somehow didn't fit in. And just gonna have a sip of water. So, as I said already, pregnancy nowadays has been eroticized, glamorized, and commodified, and we are used to seeing the pregnant body posed in a certain way, which is very often with a cis woman's hand covering her breasts and cradling her own bump. Next slide. And this all started with Demi Moore in 1991. I don't know if you know the cover, it's very famous, Vanity Fair. And this is basically the first time that a famous person has promoted pregnancy in a different way and has basically, she's basically responsible for the paradigm shift and for allowing people to see or to represent pregnancy as something, or a pregnant body as a sexual body, which was a great achievement in a way, but also, and she also said she's very proud about it. She talks about it in her autobiography, and she says that it seemed ludicrous to her at the time that pregnant bodies were somehow always represented as something that is not sexual, and so she wanted to break that spell. And then that's basically set the standard for the representation of famous pregnant women nowadays. And so that's basically the kind of representation that I was confronted with when I was pregnant myself. And I kind of didn't, I felt uncomfortable with it for many different reasons. And so I embarked on a research to break this kind of representation and to understand pregnancy more as this alien colonization from within and as something that is more monstrous. You can show the next slide, please. So this is still from my work, The Host, from 2020, and it's a digital essay that we made in Unity with a kind of like a video diary. It's very much inspired by social media, and it's kind of like it has a lot of like tutorials and things in it, and you can play. Mm-hmm. Basically, you walk around the digital environment and you see different videos of more monstrous, or that was at least my attempt, more monstrous pregnancy. And so my aim in this work is basically to de-romanticize and to de-gender pregnancy. And also, of course, because I come from performance, I was thinking a lot about like what are movements of pregnant bodies that are not typically shown, and like scratching the belly, for example, having also more like, yeah, not a sexual attitude towards this pregnant body, let's say. I brought a little quote from Julia Kristeva because this was also an important angle for the work. You can show the next slide, please. To look at pregnancy as something, yeah, weird, alienating, and kind of abject and very corporeal. Cells fuse, split, and proliferate. Volumes grow, tissues stretch, and body fluids change rhythm, speeding up or slowing down. Within the body, growing as a graft, indomitable, there is an other. And no one is present within that simultaneously dual and alien space to signify what is going on. And so from that work, I kind of shifted towards looking at pregnancy more from a posthuman kind of perspective, and this is the next work I'm going to talk about very briefly, Posthuman Wombs, which was invited by Anna and Maria to, and I forgot your name, the day was too full, sorry. Ulrika, to Stockholm. And it's basically it was initially a hybrid of live performance and VR experience, and then it later turned into, there's one slide missing, later turned into a VR installation, doesn't matter. And in the work, for the work, I interviewed different people who are connected to pregnancy in different ways. For example, this person, Fercha Pombo, who is a trans non-binary person who documented their pregnancy on Instagram. And these people, they later in the work, they kind of come together in this utopian world in which they all are pregnant. And basically for the work, I scanned their bodies and then re-impregnated their bodies virtually. And so they come together in this kind of utopian world. And the idea behind this whole endeavor basically is to propose pregnancy as a hack. So pregnancy as something that could maybe one day be applied on all bodies, no matter if they are born with uteri or not. And this is very much connected also to the Xenofeminist manifesto, which questions very much the idea of what is natural, and which looks at technology as a means to pursue feminist values. You can play the next clip. This is just a short clip.
Basically a state of transformation. And I was thinking today, nothing should be accepted as fixed, permanent, or given. And I was thinking, I refuse the category of natural. Anyone who has been deemed unnatural knows that the glorification of nature has nothing to offer. And I was thinking, what if pregnancy is a hack that could be applied on all bodies?
So this is basically the final chapter of Posthuman Wombs, which is this kind of super utopian, very pink world in which everybody is pregnant and coexists and also interchanges data with sheep and plants. And so even though actually it is possible to transplant uteri, I don't know if you're familiar with this procedure, there has been already 100 successful uterus transplantations, and already 50 babies have been born through uterus transplantation. But this is only possible for bodies that have actually been born with uteri. So you can stop the video, thank you. So now we are already at part 2, the second part and the last part of my lecture. As a next step, I was curious to think about a way of human reproduction that basically lies outside the body and therefore is not reliant on uteri. And so part two is on ectobag and the future of human reproduction. And I brought this quote also that you will be familiar with, probably from Donna Haraway, because a lot of people who work with world building and game engines, of course, work with Donna Haraway. And so I will just bring it anyways, and I will explain why. I think this is still very important methodologically for me. It matters what stories tell stories. It matters what thoughts think thoughts. It matters what worlds worlds. And I think especially if we think about technological advancement, it is extremely important to have subversive and clever narratives ready. And this is what I'm trying to do with my work. I'm thinking about technologies that are in the making, basically, at the moment. And I am trying to frame them in a specific way that I think is kind of applying utopianism as a methodology. But yeah, because I'm also, of course, yeah, the Donna Haraway with the SF tools, so string figures, science fiction, speculative fabulation is important for my work. I'm thinking, of course, a lot about science fiction, and a part of my work or my research right now is how science fiction basically is becoming science fact at the moment. And so I brought this video from The Matrix, which you will all know. It's when Neo awakes basically outside the Matrix, and he kind of awakes in an artificial womb kind of situation. And so this is what I'm going to be talking about right now. Ectogenesis is the scientific term. Ectogenesis, the definition is the development of a mammalian embryo in an artificial environment. And the concept is not new. I think it has been around for at least 100 years in Western literature. And in actually exactly 100 years ago, the scientist John Burden Sanderson Haldane has written about it and has said that he thinks if women can be freed from the necessity of pregnancy, sex, and reproduction, that would imply a drastic change in the imbalance of power in society. So where is science at the moment? In 2018, the World Health Organization reported that an estimated 15 million babies are born preterm every year, and that this figure is rising, so before 37 completed weeks of gestation. And so, next slide, please. Here you see a figure from Nature magazine. Is everybody familiar with this? It's the bio bag. So in 2017, researchers from the University of Philadelphia made huge progress with artificial wombs and developed this bio bag, which is really basically a plastic bag in which there is a premature lamp. And they made successful trials and published them. And the result I'm going to be showing now is this cutie. Unfortunately, so they came out, some of the lambs that they did these trials with came out healthy. Unfortunately, they were killed after the trial and dissected because the researchers wanted to find out how the lungs developed. And I think that says a lot, of course, about human superiority and how we treat other organisms and other animals that we don't even understand are actually our kin or our companion species, in Donna Haraway's words. And so there is another team of researchers which applies another methodology.
Is that the liquid filled chambers layer is not conductive. And
in this unique group, each collaborator has different skills. They are united by the goal of designing and building a womb that replicates the conditions inside a real one. Good modeling is the key to success here.
We predict the weather by making a model of the stratosphere by using mathematical models. We want to predict what will happen, in this case for the cardiovascular system of the baby inside the womb of the mother.
Other projects in this field are testing by placing baby animals, such as lambs, in bags of liquid. But this EU-funded team is using a very different beast: silicone rubber.
We can hopefully postpone animal experiments for a while by making mannequins that help us to mimic and simulate, like a flight simulator, what is happening in the system.
Juliette von Haren is in charge of designing the mannequins.
You see basically the range of motions that we can achieve using these flexures and the motors that we have embedded in our mannequin. What I find very interesting about this project is that it is at the intersection of art, design, and biology, engineering.
Yeah, so that's the other team from the University of Eindhoven that is making significant progress. Yeah, I'm good in time, thank you. That is making significant progress at the moment, and they are estimating that they will have this technology ready for application in around 10 years. But this is only for preterm babies, and there are it's not allowed at the moment to actually grow human fetuses in biobags or in ectogenesis. The other biotechnology that I want to talk about briefly is this one, in vitro gametogenesis. Has anyone heard the term before? But you're all familiar with in vitro fertilization, of course. And just to bring one number, because I found it quite astonishing. So in vitro fertilization has been applicable since 1978. That was the first test tube baby that was born. And ever since, there were 12 million babies born through IVF, which is quite a lot, especially if we remember that at the time people were giving out warnings and saying that IVF is going to disturb society as we know it and basically destroy the fundamentals of society. So in vitro gametogenesis has produced this little fellow. Emily Witt writes in the New Yorker in an article, in 2016, 2 Japanese reproductive biologists, Katsuhiko Hayashi and Michinori Saito, made an announcement for the journal Nature that read like a science fiction novel. The researchers had taken skin cells from the tip of a mouse's tail, reprogrammed them into stem cells, and then turned those stem cells into egg cells. So this was in 2016, and now in 2023, so last year, they have actually managed to use these egg cells and sperm cells that they fabricated in the lab and to actually fertilize them. And so this is the first mouse that was born with 2 dads. So this is a mouse that was completely fabricated from the skin cells of 2 male mice, basically. Is it clear? Yeah. Okay, cool, amazing. And now these researchers actually want to move on. So these work for universities. These are for 2 actually now competing Japanese universities. And they are now moving on also to apply the same technology with human cells. And at the same time, there is this startup, which is also, in my opinion, blending science fiction and science fact very much. There's this startup that exists for real. And it's based in Berkeley, and they started in 2018, and they have since then raised almost $40 million in venture capital, and they are working also on IVG. And what's interesting about this, and what is also interesting for my work, because I think a lot about what is good technology, and what do we do with the fact that technology is always dual use, and in a capitalist system, what do we do with the technologies that are emerging, or how can we come up with policies in time before someone capitalizes on them, is that these people, they have all this venture capital, much more than the universities do, and they don't have to publish their results. So they are keeping their results for themselves. And they say that they have actually already managed to fertilize an egg, a human egg. So you can play it also, it's just for a little glimpse into their self-branding, which is also something that I'm very interested in for my own work. And just a little bit of hot gossip, the person who is the CEO of this company, Matt Krisilov, is gay, and he says that one of his motivations for having this or starting this company is that he's gay, and he was actually dating Sam Altman for some time, so the person who founded OpenAI, and they were working also together. Okay. And now I'm going to talk quickly, 5 minutes, perfect, about my own work, Ectobag, which is a work that I made in 2024, and it was presented at HEC, Haus der elektronischen Künste. You can show the next, yeah, that's the installation view, and it's basically a mixed media installation with a 3D print and a video, and the 3D print basically is the product that I'm selling. So I invented this company, Ectobag, and Ectobag produces artificial wombs in the style of like luxury handbags. And the video that you see in the background, I'm going to show you an extended version of it in a second, is basically the commercial that goes along with the sculpture.
pregnancy can be risky, and for many, traditional conception is a challenge. Ectobag redefines pregnancy, creating a shared, customizable experience outside the body. With breakthrough in vitro gametogenesis, we can now transform skin cells into both egg and sperm cells. Embrace the new era of pregnancy, beautifully designed for today's world, and check out our new collection.
Okay, it goes on. You see two other models of handbags basically in the work, but that's pretty much the work, yeah. So what interests me about these biotechnologies that are emerging at the moment is, yeah, how can we narrate them and how can we hopefully also be present while they are emerging and really think about how they can be used for more access and more equality rather than the opposite, because these are expensive biotechnologies and they're of course going to be eaten up by turbo-capitalist logics. So yeah, that's my research at the moment. And maybe we have time for questions, I don't know.